Haha, that looks really cute.
Oh, I love it!
You're listening to the Mike Cassidy Photography Podcast. It's your real-world photography business masterclass with no BS and no magic shortcuts. Here's your host, Mike Cassidy.
And boom goes the dynamite. My name is Michael, and I am your reggae neighbor.
I am your neighbor.
Welcome to the showground. What's going on, world? It seems to me that people have suddenly started coming out of the woodwork this spring, and I guess weddings are back on, so that's a good thing for everybody. You know, I had people started to pop up, and they booked a slot, and booked another slot and booked another slot, and then before I really kind of realized it, I kind of was filling up my whole spring calendar, and now everything is practically full. I have a spot here to, there I can still fit somebody in, but that's good. And I hope everyone else really out there involved in this wedding business is really seeing their inbox with more inquiries in it this spring as well. And after last year, I want everybody to get back in action and get back to really what they enjoy doing the best, and that is photography. And it's a nice feeling. It's a nice feeling to get those inquiries. And spring is typically a busier time for me, maybe my busiest time. And this year, I'm going to be weightlifting people again, which is kind of normal for me in spring. The bad part is what I have to go through is I'll hear from a lot of brides very late in their cycles. I'll have people contacting me in like May when their wedding is June, or late April when their wedding is in May. And by that time, my schedule is long, usually filled, and they're like, oh, I really meant to get in touch with you earlier the year, and I just kept forgetting and pushing it back. And I get it. People are busy, but it's always tough not having space for people and, having to tell them, I just can't do it. And it's a little bit more difficult this year, too. I think it's going to be because there were some holdover weddings from last year, so I didn't have the number of slots I normally would. And I have the feeling I'm going to be working extra this year just to accommodate some of these people, and that's okay. It's, again, sort of doing a little catch-up, and that's the way I guess it goes. And one person I'm not going to be waitlisting, however, is today's guest, and it's Kirstie Jones from Kirstie Marie Photography. You know Kirstie? Kirstie is an equine portrait photographer located in Dallas, Texas. And now you're saying to yourself, okay, Mike, what the heck is that? Well, she takes these stunning photos of horses and their owners that are really about showing the connection and the relationship between the two. And we had this fabulous talk about her business and how she got started doing what she does and the skills she needs and the lessons she's learned along the way. And one thing is that Kirstie is supremely talented, and I consider myself so lucky to be able to have this chat with her and find out a little bit more about her process. And really for me, that kind of insight enables me to enjoy her beautiful photos even more. So, in this episode, in the beginning, you'll hear us discussing a few of her images. And if you'd like to play along, you can click on the links down below and see the photos we were discussing. And you can hear Kirstie's insights into these photos, which I'm sure you'll enjoy. And one other note, though, this is another episode where my settings were a bit wonky and I really wasn't unaware of this. as I was recording, and it didn't sound any different to me, but apparently my mic level was too high, and it's not nearly as bad as the one a few episodes ago, but there were some spots where you're going to hear my mic clipping, and there isn't really anything that I can do to fix it, at least that I know of, like sort of afterwards. But we're in the clear after this episode. We're back to good. So, and as always, I enjoy hearing from you. You can connect with me online at Instagram at Mike Cassidy Podcast or via my email at mike@thephotographypodcast.show if you feel like reaching out to me. And thanks so much, and I'll see you on the next show, and keep on reggaeing. You picked up the camera and just started with horses, or was it something else that you were doing before that?
So I've ridden horses my entire life, and as long as I can remember, I've been on the back of a horse. And I grew up competing quite a bit, which landed me in Texas. So I grew up in Oregon, but I rode for Texas Christian University's equestrian team.
Horned Frogs.
They have, go Frogs. They have an NCAA team, so I was on scholarship to ride for them, and it was
really?
college.
They have that that's a sanctioned event.
It is. It's still classified as an emerging sport within the NCAA. So they have what's called emerging sports and championship sports. So if you're a championship sport, you're kind of good to go. You're cemented. But the emerging sport, you have X amount of years to get enough teams involved to turn into a championship sport. So it's still growing. It's pretty small, but it's still growing.
Who takes part in that? Like, what type of universities do you find? Is it mostly like Big 12 area schools, like down south, or is it just random schools like around the country?
It's random schools. There's some in the Northeast.
Really?
There's quite a few SEC schools. So
that have equestrian
yes.
in there?
Yeah, so the SEC has a good presence. The Big 12 has a good presence. There's a couple on the West Coast. There's Fresno State University.
Really? I didn't even know that.
Yeah. So we have enough to put a couple of conferences together and then a national championship in the spring.
But how do you travel? That's the one thing, that's what's curious to me. So if you're having an away match,
yes,
and you're going to Fresno, I guess you got to load all the horses on the cart.
So the way that college equestrian works is quite different than, growing up. Horse showing is a very individual sport, right? It's you and your horse versus everybody else. The way that the college format works is totally different. So the school owns the horses. The school will own between 40 and 60 horses, depending on the size of the program at the school. And so I rode for TCU, so we had about 40, 45 horses. And the home team sponsors kind of the competition, and they provide all of the horses. So the away team arrives, and the way that they try to make... And the way that they try to make this fair is that, say, you ride for Baylor, I ride for Texas Christian University. We will both draw a horse named Buddy. I'll go ride Buddy and get a score, and then you get on Buddy, ride a score. Same pattern, same judge, the highest score wins.
So they can't give you all the old horses that don't...
Exactly. It takes... Because a typical horse show, the nicest horse is going to win, right? So it's very difficult to judge your capacity as a rider when everybody's on a different horse. And so the way that the college format works is that they try to make it as even of a playing field as they can. Therefore, everybody with the same pattern under the same judge in the same arena on the same horse, whoever can score the higher point, or whoever scores the highest score wins the point for the team. And
what is the main event there that happens? Is it like steeplechase type riding? I don't know that much about it. It's not a race. People, I'm sure, aren't racing.
In college, there's only 4 events for this NCAA type format. There's 4 events. 2 of them are English, so there's a jumping class that is judged
over the water,
over fences, over jumps. Yeah, over jumps. So there's a jumping class, and then there's called a flat class, and so they are judged on the rider's position and posture and ability to maneuver the horse through the patterns.
So it's a subjective thing on one.
Yes.
More so than a timed.
Yeah, none of these are timed. No, they're all judged in
form and style. So when you're going over, you're staying upright or whatever it is.
Exactly.
I gotcha.
Yep. And then there's 2 Western events called horsemanship and reining. And horsemanship is a much slower event. It's a pattern. You're guiding a horse through a series of maneuvers, and reining is sort of a faster version of that. Again, a set of maneuvers that you're doing, but it's a little bit more exciting with sliding stops and really fast spins and some galloping circles and stuff like that. So
yeah, I had no idea that existed, but it makes perfect sense. And it would be fun to probably go to, like down in that area. I wouldn't probably see that too much of that in the Northeast. Apparently, I didn't even know it existed.
The Northeast has an enormous presence of hunter jumper people, and so all the recruiting predominantly comes from the Northeast.
What universities up here do that?
There's
I know
Delaware State University.
Okay, that's more rural. Yeah.
I'm saying recruiting comes out of there. I don't think many schools are up there.
I thought you meant
girls are getting recruited out of there.
I thought you meant universities that take part in that activity, because everything is so urban and condensed, and I'm like out of the Big East area up here in Rutgers, and it's the middle of a city. I'm like, or there's some, but I'm like, I don't think they'd have room to.
I imagine they have a club team. Almost every single university has a club team. Yeah, which is just it's a similar format, but not sanctioned by the NCAA. Gotcha. There's a whole other governing body for all of the more recreational sport hobby teams, intramural type things. So.
But that's fun. So you did that for 4 years, or for your tenure while you were in there. So I guess that was your connection in the whole time, because you grew up with horses. You took part of that.
Yeah. So my senior year of college is when I picked up a camera, and I had no intention of being a photographer whatsoever. I just wanted nice pictures for myself, and so to practice, I went out. I bought the camera as a Christmas present for myself, from me. And I went out to my parents' front pasture and started practicing on all the horses. And it wasn't long before I started asking my friends if I could photograph them with their horse. And I never really strayed away from girls and horses. That's the only thing that spoke to my heart. That is the only thing that I wanted to capture. I worked for a wedding photographer who did families as well. And I learned so much about the business, and that I would never ever want to be a wedding photographer ever.
Yeah, that would be for me. But
weddings, newborns, families, no, thank you. So that was a valuable experience to learn what I did not want to do.
Right. Well, that's important.
Exactly. Yeah. So I never had to venture into all these, different types of photography. I just kind of stayed in my lane.
Kind of found your footing there, but it really shows. And I was looking through some of those photos, and I really like on your website how they're all on the front page like that, but you can see somebody's enthusiasm or how they enjoy what they do by looking at those photos. So I think that really comes across, and then that I think motivates people to do better and better work over time, because if you're doing weddings and you hate it, and oh my God, I gotta go to 4 a.m. on another Saturday, and it becomes the same thing over and over again, you kind of just start to go through the motions, and I think that people can get burned out, but that over time you can see they're not quite putting in the work and the effort, they kind of lose the passion for that
Definitely.
stuff. But every one of yours, you stop and you're like, wow, this is really pretty, and you just go through image after image, and you just see that consistency. Now, I'm sure the first time you picked up the camera wasn't at the same level of photos that you were doing now. Everybody sort of goes through that curve to kind of figure things out, So I'm guessing, and your work at the beginning was quite a bit different than what you're producing right now. Yeah.
So kind of what happened was, it was the same time I was planning my wedding that I was getting into photography. So I was scouring Pinterest, and back then the wedding blogs were huge. So things like Style Me Pretty and Green Wedding Shoes.
Yeah.
And there was a real rise in these, the styled shoots and the styled weddings and the weddings. So I'm trying to plan my own wedding, and I find I'm just completely drawn to this aesthetic that was very popular, and clearly still is in wedding photography, with medium format film. So I loved the really green blues, and I loved the pastel soft colors, and very romantic, ethereal posing, and all of that. And so I, very quickly after purchasing my first DSLR, said, this is not producing the images that I like. And so I went out and I got a Contax 645 film camera and started shooting Fuji 400H film, and was trying to really create all of that romantic storytelling that I was drawn to from these wedding photographers, and sort of recreate that between a girl and a horse. So I'd kind of study how they were posing the bride and the groom and be like, okay, take the groom away and insert a horse.
We'll get into this a little bit more, but the looks I see in yours is not necessarily always like Western, as you may think. It's more styled. Like you said, I noticed that immediately, and we'll cover that a little bit.
Sure, yeah.
Down, but I can see that influence that you mentioned.
So my first camera was a DSLR, but when I started my business, I was actually shooting all film until I kind of figured out how to replicate what I wanted aesthetically with my digital camera. I was all film, and then it moved into a hybrid, and now I'm all digital. I'm fully digital now. But that's kind of how that progression of my work and the finding my signature style and the way that I wanted to pose people and the way that I wanted the overall image to look kind of came about was honestly through studying those wedding blogs and following a lot of wedding photographers.
It's very distinctive, and you nailed it there, because what happens, I think, people attempt to copy a lot of looks like that and they go too far, or it just doesn't look the way, it just doesn't look natural, it doesn't fit in some way, and I can't really describe it. People are big on actions and all these presets and stuff like that, and I think they just overdo it a bit, and it kind of ruins the look and tone of the image, because they feel that they have to make it look like everybody else's, which I think is what you really don't want to do. And it's hard in this day to kind of come up with sort of a unique look and style, and your images do certainly separate themselves, and they're very unique in that aspect. And actually, I'm going to bug you. I'm going to even ask you I'm going to give you these links and tell me a little bit about what's going on in here. I'm just going to send this link over to you in the chat.
Okay.
And this one, and you can click on that. Boring for the people at home, but fun for me. We don't care about the people listening. It's all about me. So this actually is a little video.
Yes.
From your Instagram, little drone shot, and what's going on. And again, these links so everybody can play along at home and click in, and it's fun to see these. So what's going on here, Kirstie?
Yeah, so this was a fashion editorial for a magazine. I was hired by Cowgirl magazine to shoot a fall fashion editorial for them. So it was styled by their team, and then had the models and the makeup artists, and I got the horses involved because I can't shoot anything without horses. So I made sure there were horses involved at a ranch that is here near me. But this was a lot of fun.
And what were they doing there with, I guess, was the drone part, or just someone there just had that and they just did that shot for the sake of capturing it for the video? Was that part of it?
My husband does a lot of the video for me. So if I want any video produced for me, for my brand, for my blog, so that's my husband on the drone shot, and he will also film with DSLRs, but he does a lot of the film work for me.
Well, that's fun. It's beautiful. I mean, out there, and you could tell it's very styled, the woman hair and the makeup. So I guess they're telling that was their outfit dressing her up.
Yes, and then that was published in their print magazine. Yes.
Very nice. So now we're going to go on to number 2. Sorry, everybody. I just want to know about these pictures. So that was like the second one. Going in there. See, this is great.
So this is a senior client of mine. So this is a high school senior. And we did this in Nebraska. And these are her 2 personal horses. So this is client work, not commercial or
professional.
Editorial, or doesn't she look like Gigi Hadid though? I was like, she's 6 feet tall. She's gorgeous. Wow. She's
I was going to say the horse looks small, but she's
really tall.
You don't get that sense of scale. I was going to say that horse on the right looks like it's kind of
client of mine that just absolutely looks like a model. I could not stop seeing Gigi Hadid the whole time that I was shooting her. I'm like, you look like a little baby Gigi.
Now, when we click through, I just realized there's a bunch on here. Like 10. When you have like that second, now to me it seems the second shot where she's holding, I guess you can't pose 1,500-pound horses. So this, you can't say, all right, both guys, bring your heads in here. Like,
I wish.
Is that just one of those moments where it just kind of happened and you stand there and catch the phone?
So I have an idea, and I always have an idea of what I want a pose to look like, and I will attempt to get it, but at the end of the day, it's whatever the horse will do. So I'm at complete mercy of what this animal is willing to do, because if you think about it, it's kind of like a 1,200-pound toddler. I mean, you have limited communication, and you're really just trying to motivate them into doing what you want them to do. So it's a lot of bribery with snacks, and you
can't be like, don't move, because they're going to move. So
yes. So I mean, horses will naturally touch noses, and so something like that is a tiny bit more predictable. If I'll be like, okay, now bring their faces together. Although
you'll know their behavior, what
then
they're likely to,
you could. I mean, if they're naughty horses, they will squeal and strike at each other or bite each other right there. And so then you kind of like, oh boy, all right. So you can create dangerous situations, knowingly or unknowingly, by doing things like that as well. But no, moments like that are extra special because you cannot communicate directly with the horse on what you want. So it's like...
Do they get to know each other? Like, are there like friends? Like if they're living together, they're like, more, I don't want to say friendly, but they're more comfortable. So they get used to their friends or stablemates.
Yes. For sure. They definitely do. But I always joke like, okay, like I'll explain to my client, this is what I want. This is what's in my head. But then I just have to completely go with what the horse gives me or doesn't give me, like what he's willing to do or what he's not willing to do.
That was one of those days where kind of...
There's no amount of forcing them into doing something like that. It's just not going to happen.
I could imagine. And then there's this last one, which is super pretty. And again, this one seems to me like, I don't know how the hell you did this.
So, my computer's freezing on me here. But this is the 3 horses with the girls on the couch, right?
Yeah.
My computer just decided to freeze. Yes, did you swipe to the second picture?
No.
Okay, swipe to the second picture, because I think that's why I thought you pulled that one up.
Oh, no. Actually, I just saw that about... Yeah, that... And just if people can't see, there's like a small couch, and the 2 girls sitting on the couch, and behind them is like a steer with these enormous horns.
Yeah, he's a big longhorn. A giant longhorn steer. So the horses just had multiple handlers. So, it's difficult when you're working with that many horses that close in proximity.
So there's somebody that's sort of like holding it, and then you say like, get out of the way.
Yeah, exactly. So it's kind of one person for each horse. And sometimes there's a lot of Photoshop magic that has to happen. So, I'm editing out their leads.
The rain or
people or whatever. So sometimes it's kind of not really a composite. I mean, sometimes it does have to be a composite.
I know what you mean.
But sometimes there's a little magic. Sometimes you get angel horses that will just do what you want them to do, and God bless those horses. But then the second one with the longhorn, he's really friendly.
He just kind of wandered through?
Well, he's so friendly, and he loves Wonder Bread, like the white Wonder Bread loaves. So he was so Grandpa had this whole loaf of bread, and he was like luring the steer with the bread. Actually, I think he's a bull, to be honest. I think he's a bull.
That's safe?
And so he was like...
That's safe for those girls?
I mean, the depth perception is pretty off here. He's very far behind them.
Okay.
But he's like, he was bottle fed as a baby, and so he's like very, very docile.
I don't know. It could be perfectly safe, but just for like a New Jersey guy.
I mean, the thing is those horns spread probably 7 or 8 feet. That is how enormous. Like you're kind of not seeing the depth perception of how big he is.
Right.
But I mean, he just swings his head and he could knock you out. Like,
right.
So anyway, the grandpa was like luring him with the Wonder Bread, and I was cracking up laughing. So it was just so funny because he was just following him like a puppy dog. Right. Like he was just like giving him like one slice of bread at a time.
And he was following along.
Yes, and then he just like parked him right there, and then this big old bull is just modeling away. Like he was just looking left, looking right, looking straight at my camera.
He was pretty good.
He was hamming it up. He was like, this is my moment. So anyway, these clients of mine, I think this is our 5th session together. They're like dear friends of mine now. But this was our most recent session together, and we had so much fun. It was a magical night together, and it was a ton of fun. So
it's just this shocking two beautiful girls sitting there.
Yeah, they're sisters.
And behind it is this, like, don't you get any ideas about coming, it's just such a juxtaposition in two very different things you don't expect to see. And
you have feminine and fragile, and then quite dangerous and strong.
Giants. My goodness, that's just, and I guess you're okay. How close are you to this? Like, are you okay?
We're in a huge pasture of cows, actually. So there were cows all around us.
No, but if that thing suddenly thinks that you have the bread and starts coming like right at you, what do you do?
So I had my husband over my shoulder, because the thing is that when I'm in these pastures, your peripheral vision is so limited when you're looking through a viewfinder, right? So I usually have my assistant, or if my husband's assisting me, I tell them to be my bodyguard, right? So like stand next to me, over the top of me, because I don't understand what's going on around me. Like when I'm looking through a viewfinder, all that peripheral vision and obviously behind me, I'm very unaware of. So I always kind of have a bodyguard or someone like protecting me, whether there be loose horses in the pasture or loose whatever livestock there might be. I just want to be protected from a stampede in the event that would happen. So that
you don't have to be the fastest person in that pasture. You just have to be faster than your husband. That's all that matters. Just keep on running. I do like to stay near fences, though. I will say that, so I can slip out to the other side if I need to. I like to stay over there, but no. Thankfully, this group of cattle were very, very, very friendly. They deal with humans on a daily basis, so they were. Holy
they were very
cow! And these, I guess they knew. These two girls knew what they were.
Oh yeah.
Did you tell them don't look behind you? Don't look, turn around.
No, they weren't afraid at all.
Don't turn around.
No, they were up petting him and everything. I'm telling you, they grew up with that cow. So they bottled fed him from a baby. They're so used to him. They see him every day. His name is Big Red. And so they,
they were okay with that.
Yes.
And I imagine, especially like this first shot with the three horses, that's winding up on somebody's wall somewhere.
Yes.
I'm guessing on a big
that's the
canvas or printer or somewhere. Yes. So that's really, I'm guessing, where most of your work is ending up as far as the personal side of the work. Is it mostly prints and stuff like that, or wall art? I don't see you just giving these to people in small, tiny prints. This has got to be...
A lot of my clients order large wall art. I have a lot of clients order albums. All of my packages include proof prints, so they all get proof prints in a wood box with a USB. Equine photography is a little weird in the industry that I'm in. There's a lot of publications where people advertise as well. It's a weird industry. I don't know how far down the loophole you want to go, but a lot of clients book me for their advertisements. So.
Oh, you mean to trick you to get out to photograph for one thing and it's really for something else? Is that what you're mean? Those bastards.
No, there are industry publications where youth and amateur exhibitors will advertise them with their horse before they go to a horse show, with the hopes that it gets them in front of the judges before you step foot in the arena.
Notoriety.
Exactly. So I usually know if I'm going there for ads. I know if I'm being booked for advertisements. But yeah, so it'll end up a lot of my clients will end up in those industry publications.
So they're trying to get their word out there. They're basically using you. They know it's going to be in a magazine and hoping that the judges or somebody see them and get familiar.
They pay for the advertisement. So they're buying ad space in these
Oh, I see what you're saying.
And then they need pictures for that ad, and so they book me for the pictures for that ad.
Yes. So they're paying to publish it in there to, I gotcha. And you may not know. They sometimes won't tell you or you can kind of pick up on that.
Usually they tell me. But yeah. Usually they tell me. Usually I know.
It's a rough and tumble world out there. You got to do what you can to get ahead. And yeah, everyone should go on. And you have Kirstie with multiple E's, Marie. Kirstie Marie. So I guess they can find that all just by going Kirstie Marie Photography. Yeah, because there's lots of pictures, so everyone should be on there following you and looking at these. And we could spend a half a day going through all of these, but we won't do that.
You're sweet.
But those are just a few that kind of like grabbed my eye. And when I was scrolling through your Instagram and doing that, but I'm guessing that it looks like there's a lot of interest in what you do, but how suitable if someone says, oh my God, I love this work, and, they're living, like we mentioned, somewhere in Massachusetts, how much opportunity does somebody have to get in and start to become, working in equine photography, or is it more, do they really have a better chance of living in more of a horse concentrated area to do something like this?
I can only kind of speak to my experience here. If you want to stay local, you're going to need to be in a heavily populated horse area. If you're willing to do a lot of travel, then, there's some pretty unlimited opportunity for you. A lot of people kind of follow the horses where they're at. So in the winter, a lot of horses are going to be in places like Wellington, Florida. And in the summer, they'll come up in the Northeast to horse show and stuff like that. And so a lot of equine photographers will kind of travel with the horses in that regard. In Texas, they live here year round. So
year-round
it's,
words.
I have a lot. I live in the heart of horse country in Texas right here, but I also do a lot of traveling. So
going around, so it can be work for somebody who is like in New Jersey. Now, actually, weirdly, New Jersey, there's a big horse part of New Jersey somewhere.
Just keep driving, you'll find it.
It's hidden, but I know
driving.
I know there are, because I know people even in a county above who have horses, but it's not as prevalent. It's something, it's atypical to see that around here, versus, I guess, in some parts of the country, it's still you driving around and seeing lots of horses. But the one thing I know about horses, I'm guessing this is true everywhere, that it's expensive to own, have, and maintain and keep a horse. It could be, I don't know, thousands of dollars a month, $1,500 at least to have. And then when people have multiple horses, it probably is exponentially gets expensive. So I know it's, you just can't go out on a whim and decide people that they love a horse, and then
the people in this are pretty serious, because
it could probably be a mortgage payment too.
It is a commitment in every sense of the word. There's no casual version of this sport.
So do you find, I guess down you, it's more native, but do you find instances where people go out and think, oh, it's a great idea to get involved in this, and soon find they're in for a lot more than they bargained for?
Oh, my own father, because the first little lessons I was getting as a little kid, it was so innocent. It was like, oh yeah, $50 a lesson, we can do that. And then, boy, by the time you're trying to purchase a horse and then start horse showing and then horse show across the country and then all the above, it's like, what did we sign up for?
And he's working 3 jobs and he's going oh my God, what did I?
Boy, he was quite thankful for the college scholarship at the end of it. He was like, okay, maybe that was worth it. When I was getting school paid for, he was like, okay, that makes everything, all is forgiven after that point. I don't think anyone was more proud of me than he was at the point that I was getting paid to ride horses.
He's like,
finally, the checkbook could close.
That's right. He exhaled finally for the first time. And because I imagine even stabling, I guess you're paying somebody and they're doing a lot of the work, but I would imagine too, it's not, I wouldn't say a full-time job, but it's a part-time job, even if you keep the horses on your own property, because every day they need attention. So it's probably tough if you're working even to a regular job and come home to start taking care, and you probably still need someone else coming in to assist and do that. So I can imagine it's expensive and
are correct.
And not for everybody. And hopefully people don't go out and thinking it's going to be easy, get in there. And so what happens? I guess if people go out and get involved with a horse or two and then they realize it's not for them, or the expense or so forth, what happens? I guess they can sell them. But if people can no longer take care of them, are there shelters that will take in horses?
Rescue centers. So there are a lot of rescue centers and operations where you can adopt a horse out of. So if they have, rescued a horse from a bad situation, then you can adopt that horse out. And then, but you can also sell your horses. So
there's a market where people will, so it wouldn't be impossible to, because I imagine that
you can buy,
not great for the horse, but it would be better than someone sort of giving up on it, just kind of sitting there and not being treated the way that it
horses
should.
Are bought and sold all the time.
Yep. And if you were to have decide that you want to bring in your own, like how much land, like in term, I don't be exacting, but if someone wanted to, like how much property, like how much room do they require for like just to be out and running? Because again, I imagine you can't keep a horse in a little backyard or a pen. It wants to run a little bit.
There are varying opinions, but a really loose rule of thumb is kind of 1 acre per horse. So some people will say they need more than that, and some do less, but about 1 acre a horse. So if you had 5 acres, you could feasibly have 4 or 5 horses out there.
Really? Mm-hmm. It's a lot of work. And it wouldn't find me. I like them. I could like them from a distance, but I know that the work involved. I look at, that's a lot of. So do you do your own, or do you take care of your own?
No, I live in a subdivision.
So you're not.
I board my horses at a boarding facility.
Elsewhere.
They're elsewhere. Gotcha. Someone else takes care of them, and then when I ride, I have friends to ride with. So it's at a big facility where there's like covered riding arenas and a bunch of amenities. So it's nice that there's like hot water to give them a bath in the winter, and there's a covered arena. So if it's bad weather, I can still
get out there and
still ride. And then they have their stalls and people taking care of them, and so I can go on vacation for 2 weeks or go on all these work trips of mine.
Yeah, I didn't think about that.
And never have to worry about caring for them. So it's
because you can't leave. They're like, hey, we're hungry. We need our oats. And someone's got to be there all the time.
Yes.
And if I were somebody looking to work with you, and I came across your website, and just not as far as we'll talk a little bit about magazine or like commercial, but just like a individual client that comes in, and I reach out to you, I fill out your contact form. What's the process? Like if you're in Texas and I say, hey, but I'm in Nebraska, and love your work, and, not talking like money part aside, what is the process in terms of getting ready and logistically, what do the people need to do, or what's your process as far as, vetting somebody or making sure that you're a person and that you're your type of client and things are going to proceed and book from there? Yeah,
so I generally require about 3 people to make a trip happen. So I'm going to be asking, do you have any barn pals or people you're aware of, or anybody, any friends or people that you ride with who would also be interested in a session? I will, if they're very serious, and I'll kind of ask what time of year they're thinking, if they have any deadlines, like I said, for those advertisements, or, sometimes high school seniors and whatnot have yearbook deadlines. So just kind of get an idea of when they're thinking. And I keep running tabs of people who've reached out in different areas with interest. So I have a Nebraska, I probably
if you're in that,
I probably have a running list of 6 to 8 people in Nebraska. And so if this person is very serious, says, I need you next month, then I send over all my pricing. I will reach out to all of the people who have contacted me previously saying, hey, I want a Nebraska trip. And then if I need to, I'll post on social media and say, hey, heading to Nebraska, if anybody needs pictures. So once we have...
So they'll get together.
Yeah,
and kind
3, 4, 5, 10 people, however many people want to join the trip. Then we settle on the dates, send the contracts, invoices, and it's settled. I'll book the flights, the accommodations, all the rest of it, and I'll get out to Nebraska.
So and I'm sure there's a lot of people, and this is a common with me too. There's a lot of people that may reach out to you. Oh my God, Kirstie, I love your work. And then when they hear how much it costs, they're like, so, is there a lot of sort of heartbreak that you have to deal with, or disappointment in terms of people when they would really love to do this? I mean, that I have to deal with that, and it's an unfortunate thing. But is that a big part of it, where there's a lot of people who want to work with you but just can't?
Some. I don't deal with that a lot. I put my starting prices on my website, and so if they've done any research, they understand a general idea
where they're going to be at.
Charge. Second to that, horses are extremely expensive. So, and things related to horses are extremely expensive.
So it's not out of line with everything else. I gotcha. Makes sense.
There's not a lot of sticker shock. I mean, there is sometimes, but the thing is that if they've been following me for any amount of time, or they have done any form of research, I have it in multiple places on my website, there isn't going to be a lot of sticker shock. Sometimes there is, but most of the time,
They're aware.
Yes.
So there wasn't a lot of instances where someone's
no.
like,
and when I worked full time and I was doing this on the side, I had my full pricing on my website because I was like, look, the only inquiries I can take are the people ready to sign a contract.
Yeah.
So I had my full pricing on my website. That way, every single inquiry was saying, basically, this is the date I want to shoot. Send me a contract. And
because you don't have time.
Exactly.
Right,
I'm like, I don't have time to educate you. I don't have time to field, all these questions left, right, and center. And so that did me a lot of favors. And I switched to just my starting prices when I became full time because I do have more time to field inquiries. So I switched that, but that definitely helped me out, and I never disappointed people then because, anybody reaching out to me was ready to book. They were ready to put their retainer down, and they were ready
on
to,
there.
Yeah, they were ready to commit.
But there's always the people who are just, do you ever have someone like that when you see the person,
just
oh my
window
God.
shoppers, yes.
That would, happens, same thing. So I know, and it's unfortunate. One of the things you have to deal with and going on and doing something like this. Another thing I was curious about too, and on this show, it's more about the business and not necessarily about the hardware or the photography gear, but in terms of once you're there and working, and I brought this up a little bit before, as far as distance goes, like what type of, are you closer or further away, and what type of lenses? I would imagine you have to be further, so you'd probably be working with some longer lenses on this than
there's a
closer.
Considerable amount of distortion and compression involved when you're shooting an animal with such a large head. So I shoot predominantly with my 135 millimeter lens, and there's kind of a general consensus among equine photographers that the optimal focal length is 200. So I am a little under that, but at 135 I'm not really noticing the lens distortion very much as it. If you were shooting a horse with a 50 millimeter or a 35 millimeter lens, there is a considerable amount of lens distortion happening, and their head looks disproportionately large to their body.
Even with the software fixing it, even
Correct.
with the
Yes,
adjustments.
Yes. And a lot of it has to do with the compression. And so for me, I shoot with a 135. I love my 135. I'm also kind of the minority because a ton of people like the zoom. So
to be further.
Yeah. Some people like to be further, but a lot of people like zoom. I just zoom with my feet, and I'm constantly moving the entire session. Up closer and then out farther and left and right, and I just kind of zoom with my feet with my prime lens. But I really love my prime lens. I've always shot prime lenses. I've never shot zoom lenses, so it's just what I'm comfortable with.
Zoom lens person too, but I was just curious in that. How close you can actually get, or if you needed to stay further away. And if you were with a bunch of people, because horses can be pretty skittish, I think. So you getting too close and they start to get a little jittery. So you may need to maintain some distance there to keep things calm and sort of, you don't want any problems there. And I noticed that I saw you were working with a couple of cameras. I even thought one of those videos looked like you had a Hasselblad in there and some Nikon gear. And it's funny that I think I was curious if you thought of buying one of those new Nikon mirrorless cameras that are just, I know I'm picking one up.
Yeah.
I think they're just coming out now. Because I had been
I'm certainly interested in renting
them.
I don't think I would commit to the purchase without renting it and trying it a few times. I have some friends who shoot mirrorless, absolutely love it, swear by it, think it's the best thing ever. So I'm willing. I haven't yet gone to rent them, but I'm willing to go rent it and try it. My D850 I love, so it would have to really blow me away because my current gear setup leaves very little to be desired. Yeah. I mean, I'm 99.9% in focus, and
it's that good. Yeah, well, the D850 was such a good, and it still is such a good camera.
Yeah, I lack very little, so it would have to.
Same with me.
That mirrorless camera would have to rock my world, which people are saying wonderful things about them. So I'm certainly willing to give it a try, but.
And I didn't get one on the first go around because I have so many Nikon things, and to me it works. I'm not looking to switch. I'm not like a trendy camera switcher, and nor am I any kind of loyal elite. Just that's what I had, and it worked. And I wound up buying, a couple of D610s a couple of years ago. And for what I do, it just suited exact. And then when they first came out with the mirrorless camera, it was like 2 years, 3, I don't even know. I'm not that just, it piqued my curiosity, but as someone who holds a camera sideways, 50% of my time, I have to have that grip on there because I'm doing so many portrait and they didn't have that. And I'm also very used to having like 2 card slots and they never had that.
I have to have 2 card slots.
So I never got the first round, but this new round has all that stuff. And it's time. So I think I'm gonna pick one up. But the curious thing to me that I like to mess around with, I wonder how this would affect you too, is I think on your screen already and the way that works, you have the sort of, this was there before but not as good, like you could, that live depth of field preview. So when you're actually looking at it, you'll see just how you're coming in focus. So someone like you too, I know you're shooting at shallow depth of field, you can see right there. You don't necessarily have to look at to me, you didn't see it so great on the little preview screen anyway. I saw it more, but I guess it would be better to see kind of what you're going to be getting and not guessing. So I think, and I'm thinking, boy, I don't think I'd get one of those Z7s, those 45s, because I'm inside mostly and I need a little bit better inside sensitive kind of a camera. So I think I'm going to buy a couple. Anyway, just popped into my head because I saw you with some of those Nikon cameras on there. And so I was just curious on your thoughts of switching. So I'll have to let you know. I'm going to pick one up.
Certainly let me know. And I think I will rent one and test it out.
Try it out. And I mentioned this earlier, and it seems most of your clients are women. And looking immediately at your photos, and you brought this up now, I understand a little bit. It's very styled, like you said, and it's not necessarily, I think some people may think, horse and more of a Western look, but it's definitely more of a magazine or put together styling. Everyone has makeup and their hair is super done. And how involved are you on that aspect of the session, as far as, are you providing this, or are your clients going out and getting hair and makeup done, especially if you're traveling or you're bringing someone there and doing it that day, or working through with their outfit selections? How involved are you when working with someone in that front?
Yes, I am as involved as they want me to be. So I give a ton of preparation to my clients, between links on my website and a beautiful magazine that I pronounce 40 pages long and I send to them. And this is how to dress for their body type, how to complement the colors that they're wearing with their horse's coat color, so that they complement their horse very well. All the way to how to prepare their skin and what to do with the nail, on and on and on, right? And I make myself as available as they want me. So I have some clients, honestly, it's few and far between, but I always leave the door open to text me all your outfits, kind of take me virtually shopping with you, let me know what you're thinking. I can help you find pieces. And few and far between, they will take me up on that offer. But I offer that to everyone, that I can style them as much as they want me to. Truth be told, most of my clients are so fashionable, they should be teaching clinics.
They're good on their own.
Yeah. I would offer no value to them. They need to be teaching me.
It looks in a lot of those, and the reason I brought that up, because a lot of these photos, it's super put together, almost like even with the client photos, they were sitting down and picking like the perfect outfits to wear in terms of what they were going to do. So I was like, that can't be by mistake or by random luck.
Honestly,
People
a lot of my clients are so fashionable, and they don't need any hand-holding. They don't need any of my help. A few of them want my help, and I'm more than willing in any capacity to help them, but the majority of them, honestly, are better than I am. So, because
even the makeup is spot on,
and I don't have, I don't offer makeup with my services. I recommend several local people. So if it's a Texas session near me, I have a couple artists that I work with that I recommend. I can't really include it in any of my packages just because of travel and
hauling someone along.
Exactly. So all that I've always been jealous of the photographers who can, to have that level of consistency working with a hair and makeup artist all the time. But it doesn't work for my business model and the clients that I have. So unfortunately, I can't do that. But I have a bunch of people I can recommend. But honestly, kids these days with YouTube. So many of my girls, I'm like, who did your hair and makeup? And they're like, I did. And I'm like, are you kidding me? It is. They got the fake lashes. They got full contouring. Yeah. They've blended their eyeshadow, so well. And they're like, they wear very heavy makeup to horse show normally because it's kind of like stage makeup if you think of it.
So they're used to it.
Yeah, you're trying to get attention from 100 feet away. So they are very talented between YouTube videos and all the rest.
You are lucky. I'm going to tell you, you are lucky.
To do their own hair and makeup. So
famous last words that I learned a long time ago. I can do my own makeup. No, absolutely no. And I think years ago I put an end to that. When someone comes in and it's this just isn't gonna happen. And that has that's a big part of the overall look of a lot of this. So if someone is like, oh yeah, I can do it, or my sister's great with, or whatever, and they show up and you're like, oof, you're already starting off. And then, to some degree that could be fixed afterwards, but it's time and energy I really do not want to put into doing that. That's for sure. So yeah, spot on with all of that. Now, another thing that popped into my head when I was looking through like those photos are all of those people that contact you the actual like owners of these horses, or are there situations where people just love that style of work so they make arrangements to go somewhere where they can take these photos and it's not really like their horses, or they're not really like, quotes there, like horse people?
Yeah. So a couple of things. The liability is enormous.
Really?
I do not have horses that I rent out to people, and if someone is not a horse person, I generally don't take their picture. So first and foremost, for me, the liability is a little bit too big. And then second to that, my entire brand is built on wanting to tell the relationship that you have with your horse. So for me personally, I want to shoot you with the horse that you love more than anything in this world. So I don't really shoot people who don't own the horse themselves, or, have a relationship with that particular horse. I don't really take people off the street. I have inquiries for it who's like, hey, do you have a horse I can shoot with? Or, it'll be like, I want my 1-year-old daughter to have a horse in the picture. Right. I'm like, ha, that's going to be a no.
It would seem to me that when I thought about that, that you may be getting something like that a lot more than initially I thought, because people would love that. I do receive the
inquiries, and I do not facilitate that yet.
Because I can see moms, I can see people. I came across your Instagram, and oh my God, that's the most beautiful. Can we do this with my daughter? I could see that happening all the time.
Yeah, especially for birthday, and people want those like little unicorn sessions, or little fairy princess sessions with little white pony in the back. And
what are the dangers? Like, what are the dangers? Or would even a stable like do that? Like, if I said, oh my God, Kirstie, I want to work with you, and I contact a local. Would they even be able to make arrangements to come in and like borrow a horse,
Sure.
or that's something that wouldn't even be possible? I guess it could vary from place to place too.
It varies place to place. I do know of some places that you can kind of like rent a horse from, and it really depends on how. It depends on that individual horse. Because, if you have a horse who can kill someone, you're probably not going to rent that one out. If you have one that is just like so safe, a complete teddy bear, like wouldn't hurt a fly, and you feel like you could bring somebody with absolutely no horse knowledge and they would not die, then you would have a situation where maybe they would rent that horse out just because they have full and complete trust in that horse. But at the end of the day, it's an animal, and they are unpredictable on every front, even if it's a external factor that might be, spook the horse, scare the horse, or otherwise, affect its, normally he wouldn't do that, but there was some extra stressor that day that caused him to break.
Right.
So horses are very dangerous.
Yeah,
horses
I'm sure. And I can
animals.
maybe see if it wasn't like a riding shot, if there was a handler there, and you could take out the lead somehow, and the person was right there, and just the person.
For me and my brand, I'm all about the relationship you have with your horse. So I have no interest in you with a random horse. There's no story to tell there for me, so I have no interest in taking your picture with a horse that you don't know.
So don't
with
contact
a stranger.
her. For everybody listening, don't call her. You're going to have a lot of people now. She's just going to say no. So we had to clear that up. Only real horse and owners are allowed. And I noticed too, you mentioned that during one of these sessions. Well, first of all, how long are you usually there? And it says you're taking you mentioned about 1,000 pictures in an hour or so, to wean that down to about 100. And I guess, again, as we mentioned earlier, this is because you're really not going to like pose big old Smokey to tell him to look this way and he's going to stay. The horse is going to be moving and jostling. So you're really like,
yeah. So I'm waiting for him to get into an ideal position where his feet are in the right spot, his neck is in the right spot, his ears are perked forward, his eyes are interested, not scared. And then you have to deal with him licking, him chewing, him blinking. So when he is virtually in the right spot, I do kind of have to lay on the shutter. And it's something where every session I wish I could shoot less, and every session I end up having to shoot. I just cannot.
Yeah.
Like, I would just rather cull than have to stitch together 6 different pictures to make this horse not look like a llama. You know what I mean? So the lips coming out. Blah, 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 exactly. And you can't tell him 1, 2, 3, look at me, don't blink, don't.
Because the horse is going to spin around, it's going to turn, it's going to come.
So, I mean, there are so many instances where shooting film was expensive. Ooh. Let me tell you how expensive that was, because he would be blinking in a shot. He would be licking his lips in a shot. He would be, all of these things where I had to take the shot and then an extra shot to be sure I had the shot.
Right.
Because you can't see the back of the screen. I don't know if I got the shot or not. So that was expensive. Right. So shooting film, I love film.
There's a trade-off.
I always love
film.
But it was not a wise business decision.
That could be super costly on that. And you're not only dealing with one person blinking and swallowing, but there's 2.
Exactly. I mean, the person I could say 1, 2, 3, and I can make sure their eyes are open and they're looking at the camera, and they've placed their hands where I want them to be. But with the horse, it's.
They're just going to do their own thing.
Yeah, and they're going to if it's a naughty horse, he might be moving constantly. So like I said, sometimes I just got to lay on the shutter, and 1 out of the 100 in that exact pose will be perfect, and I'll say, great.
I don't think there's any other way. Yeah, I don't think there's any other way.
Otherwise, I really am stitching it together in Photoshop, and that takes infinitely longer than it did to just lay on the shutter. And the thing about it being digital and not film is that, hey, it is... Sure, it's not free, but it is far less expensive than the $3 per photo I was paying to develop and scan film.
So 1,200 times 3?
Okay, I wasn't shooting quite that much with the film, but
I know that could be expensive, and you're right about these horses. They're big, and I can believe this. A lot of people in this country haven't been standing right next to a horse, but they're giant. The heads are giant. And I actually was bitten by a horse when I was a children. I was at a farm, and I remember I was really small, and there was this metal fence and supposedly, like you mentioned, tame horses, and I guess it reached right through and just like got me on the side of the head. I wasn't really doing anything. I was just kind of like standing there. So I know that there is danger
and unpredictability,
like we mentioned before, involved in working with, because of their size. And I guess they're not naturally sort of aggressive creatures, but they're going to do what they want to do. So when I contact you again to schedule a session, I'm like, yeah, Kirstie, I have these 3 great horses. And what kind of vetting or what do you ask somebody to, or are they honest about saying that these horses are going to be suitable for this type of work? Because I imagine the last thing you want to do is show up 200 or 300 miles away and have these horses jumping and spinning and neighing or whatever they do. And if that's the case, how do you come in and start to approach a situation like that and to calm things down, or in the reverse, come in and make sure it doesn't go the other way, and you showing up with a bunch of, and I imagine you have some people with you, you don't want to move or do the wrong thing, and then suddenly these horses start to get a little like, what's going on? So I imagine that's something that just takes time and experience. But what would your process be in either asking somebody about the temperament of this or finding out if they're even suitable for that type of work?
Sure. my client prep guides as well go extensively how to work your horse and prepare your horse for this day, just as much as it prepares my client and my girl for that day. So I do quite a bit on the front end to tell them. Now, that being said, not all of them listen to that. And so I think that's why it's extremely helpful that I'm a horse person myself, and I can read and understand the horse's body language, and I can tell, is this horse misbehaving because he just has too much energy? If that's the case, then I'll ask, can we go work him down and get rid of that? I mean, I have stopped the session to go lunge a horse, which is to run him in a circle, to just get the energy out, because sometimes, just like a toddler, they just have pent up energy and they won't listen to you and focus until that energy is gone. Sometimes they're in an uncomfortable situation and I've taken them kind of too far from home base. And, you know, horses are herd animals. And so if they're all by themselves, they might get really scared and worked up.
They get skittish.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that for me to understand, is he misbehaving because he's uncomfortable? In which case I'm going to take him as close to home as I can. So wherever the field that he normally lives in, I'll go there. Or if he lives in a barn, I go back to the barn. Or if he's used to another horse, I bring that horse out with us. I make the situation as comfortable as I possibly can for him. If he is being disrespectful just because I can tell he is that type of, like, nobody has...
showing off or something?
He lacks discipline, maybe. They don't get after him. And so he's learned he can walk all over this handler, and he's not listening to us because he knows he doesn't have to mind. He knows he doesn't have to pay attention.
He's the boss.
Exactly. Then that is almost, honestly, one of the trickiest situations, because I'm there to be a photographer. I'm not there to be a horse trainer. And I don't want to overstep and go discipline. Like, imagine me coming up and spanking your child. I mean, the audacity, you know what I mean?
Yeah, right. And that's what they are. These people,
I would never discipline somebody else's horse in that respect. So that honestly is one of the trickiest situations, where it's a lack of training or a lack of respect, in which case... sometimes, hopefully, there will be somebody who handles the horse regularly, like a groom or a horse trainer, something in that regard that can hopefully maybe help us, who's nearby at the barn or something like that, or we can just get more hands. But at the end of the day, I've had some very difficult sessions for any of the above reasons.
Because you can't plan. It's one of the things that's out of your control.
Exactly.
And showing up But I'm guessing, because your experience, you can tell pretty quickly if something isn't going to be going in the right direction.
I can tell you in 30 seconds how this is going to go. What the rest of the 2 hours is going to look like. I can get a
so you're like, we're in for a
quick idea.
We're a long day today. But are there usually other people there besides yourself? Like you said, because sometimes there could be someone holding a lead and they're just photoshopped out. And
so
others,
a lot of times, and I always recommend bringing someone familiar with horses, whether it be your horse trainers there, or your mom, or a horse friend, or somebody familiar with horses there. Because when you're off changing, you need somebody to hold that horse for you, you know, and whatnot. There's all sorts of situations, and especially if they have multiple horses, then we need multiple hands. So the more horses, the more help we get. I always bring an assistant who is very comfortable around horses and knows horses. And I don't like them to be that person, because I need them to get ears forward, set feet. I need them to do the things I need them to do. And so I'm always just recommending they have somebody on their side who is familiar with their specific horse, who knows them, and that they can have on that front. And then I bring my team to help me, you know? Yeah. But it usually involves a number of people. And honestly, they usually bring several people on their side, because horse people know. I mean, and horse people who have ever taken pictures before.
And how much time do you have?
I do 1 hour, 2 hours.
And how much time do you, like, is it like a child? But I mean, when you have someone come out...
before they just quit?
Is it like a child where you have like 8 minutes and you know they're going to be, or are they pretty good if you're going to say it's going to take an hour, you have an hour, or do you know if you have 15 minutes, you got to be like working really fast?
I will tell you, some horses get over it so quickly and are like, I do not want my picture taken any longer.
So they're aware.
Yes, well,
something strange is going on.
The thing is that the majority of my clients, these are competition horses, and so they are used to a job. They are not used to standing still for hours on end. And so they're sick of standing still and not doing something. Like they're world class athletes, to be honest. And so that can be one of my most difficult obstacles, is that, when they're done, they can just say, I am done. And they just...
Can you tell that, though?
1,000%.
Can you get a sense
I know when
of
it's coming
when you
soon,
think...
and you know when it happens.
We only have like 10 minutes. We got to go.
Well, but the thing is that I can normally entertain the horse, and my assistants are very, very good at this, giving them things to look at, giving them things to do. I personally move locations so frequently that giving that horse a break and a walk can completely change their demeanor. And then if I have a horse who hits a wall, I usually have them put him back in his stall, give him a 10-minute break while my girl changes. He might have had to go to the bathroom. Maybe he needs to relieve himself. Or he just needs to take a big, deep exhale. Like sometimes just taking that halter and bridle off of him, give him space.
Relax
for 5 minutes. You can take out the horse and he's a completely different animal. Like he just needed to decompress.
Some me time,
Needed to decompress, and so I have a whole bunch of tricks up my sleeve like that. If I'm pushing close to kind of getting on the edge to something like that, changing locations, sending them on a big walk, putting them back and leaving them alone for a couple minutes and coming back to it. There's a bunch of different things I can try to do to keep motivating them to want to agree with us to keep going.
And I can see this is nothing you would ever want to get yourself involved in if you didn't have that level of experience. Like it's a really, really, really bad idea if someone is listening to this and wake up the next day, boy, I think I'm going to go try this.
I would never discourage you. I would say start with riding lessons yourself. So before you ever pick up a camera and take a picture of your horse, learn about horses. Go and learn how to brush them, learn how to be around them, learn how to lead them, learn how to care for them, learn how to ride them, get lessons from a very experienced horse professional, and fall in love with the horse and learn their body language. Because the thing is that they communicate with us so clearly on your body language. And when you can realize what they look like when they're stressed, what they look like when they're excited, what they look like, you know what I mean? Then you can really prevent so many situations, and you can have a lot more control of how your photography sessions are going to go if the more experience. Are
there certain breeds of horses that you're like, yeah, no, we're not. We're not.
I won't admit to that on air, but yes.
That's it. So we don't. All right. So I won't. And because I'm not super familiar, I have been, because I used to have a friend whose father was a horse trainer, and like we're talking about in New Jersey, hidden, we won't tell you where they are, but there are big horse farms here with these enormous, it's very pretty to be there, big barns and loads of horses in a long row, and they're very lean, very like muscular with the, I don't know what you call the wraps all around there. What I recall about being near these race horses, they were very twitchy. They seem like they're on edge, like at any moment they just want to like take off. They didn't always seem like super, super calm. So that's why I was just wondering if certain types of horses may be more sedate, or if you hear someone has a particular, like, that's not for me, next customer. And just want to talk a little briefly too. And then you're working, like we mentioned this again earlier, magazines and some commercial work. So how did that come about, where you started doing these shots for magazines? Yeah, so it really started with them reaching out to me, to be honest. I have done a bit of reaching out to publications since then. But at the beginning, the very first cover that I had, I was recommended by somebody. And then from then, a few of the major publications reached out to me. Honestly, it mostly happens on Facebook and Instagram. But then when that started happening, then I realized I have a portfolio of virtually stock images that could be very valuable to magazines and brands. I have a lot of images of people caring for horses, the relationship photos of them with their horse and things like this. So then it turned into me curating galleries of exactly what that publication or that brand might want. So not just the styled images, but more like lifestyle. I don't know if equine images is the right word to say. Yeah,
exactly. And licensing the images out to brands and publications. And that really opened some doors for them to hire me for some commissioned work. So now it kind of works on both fronts. Sometimes they're just licensing an image I've previously taken, and honestly, sometimes it's my portrait work. I love getting paid for work I've already paid for.
Yeah.
So sometimes it continues to be licensed on work I've done, or they'll commission me to take something very specific that they need. But that's just kind of how my relationship has grown. And then in the last couple of years, it's also kind of grown into almost an influencer situation where it's really nice, where you can be the photographer and offer a platform like my blog, my social media, things like that, where I can work very creatively with brands and very strategically with brands on new product launches or whatever it might be,
and collaborate with them.
Yeah, for their needs. And so that is kind of how that started.
Yeah, and I noticed, again, scrolling through, because I'm snoopy, I'm looking all over your website at your stuff the other day, but there's probably a dozen or more different magazines that you had on there, and I was just curious if this was more, portrait-y style thing where they really like to have these photos of the beautiful women and the horses in there, because people would enjoy getting it for that purpose, almost like, I don't know how to, like a Cosmo, but for horse people, what I mean, where it was put together style images that people enjoyed seeing.
Right. So on the covers on my website, probably half of those are those industry publications I was speaking to you about earlier, where my clients are actually purchasing ad space. So my clients bought that cover
page. Yeah,
they paid for that cover, and
they're better than anybody else.
And then they used my image on that. The other half is publications. There's a bunch of regular magazines where the magazine paid for my image to be on the front of their cover. And so it's kind of half and half on what I have up there of what I was paid to produce for the publication or what my client paid to. But
it's still nice that they're saying to you, hey, we think this is so nice, we'd like to show it to all of our readers. And I would imagine that's where the commercial probably came from, that someone saw this and I said, wow, can you do this for our company, so I can see where those things can go hand in hand.
Yes.
So you started getting contacted by the vendors or manufacturers for these products to do. And I know there's a lot of style that goes on. There's a lot of fashion. It's not, again, where I am, but I'm sure that's a big part of it.
Sure. Yeah. No, there's a lot of clothing brands aimed towards equestrians. And so, yes, I'm very picky in the commercial work that I take, though. I will say that. I had this dream, of like, wow, it would be incredible to work with such and such brand, and all these goals of getting more into commercial work because obviously it's more lucrative. It can be. Some of the deals with big companies can be very lucrative. And I had the opportunity to be on set for a pretty major production, and it was very clear to me that does not suit me whatsoever. Like, it's the reason I'm not a wedding photographer. I don't do long days. So they shot for
the creativity, I think,
13
also too.
straight hours, and there were 3 photographers that had zero creativity because the art director had full creativity. So it's like, I showed up on set as a complete spectator, just as a fly on the wall, to see what was unfolding. And what I thought was a goal of mine, I realized I wanted absolutely nothing to do with. And that was a huge blessing because, my God, that saved me 4 years of trying to work up to that point to finally, imagine finally land the gig that was my dream job that I've been gearing for, and then realizing I didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
So I take smaller projects where I can have far more creative control. It's a very collaborative process where we can all work together, where I know my aesthetic is exactly what they want. I'm not trying to conform to them. They're working with me. You know what I mean? So that I'm involved in the conversation, I'm involved in that process. Or honestly, I have since worked for that brand I named, but I am not their commercial photographer. I do more of the influencer type thing where I get to hire the model. I get to, they send me the product that I get to style, and then I get to license the images out to them. And that works perfectly because then it's the 2 hours I want to shoot for. I'm not there for 14 hours on end. They have no people on the ground, so no one's looking over my shoulder, reviewing my images, telling me what to do.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, on and on and on. I can tell you it works perfectly for me. I'm like, look, you ship me the product. I put everything together the way I want to, and that way we have this kind of arm's length relationship that works perfectly. And that way I'm able to work with said giant brand, but in a way that
and not
works.
get a headache.
Yeah, because the stress of that.
People don't. I don't think they understand
stress of
that they don't
that
want
many
you.
People, yeah. That many people on set. That many people barking orders, and then
do it again. Do it again.
Honestly, the photographer just pushes a button.
Right.
Like
That's
you have all the
it comes down
lighting
to.
directors, like getting all the lighting just right,
styling
and then you have
people
people. Like someone else is posing that person, and then they're pulling up all these inspiration boards and mood boards, and at the end of the day, the photographer goes like this.
So anybody, as sound as it sounds, anybody can stand there and do that.
Yeah, anybody willing to be yelled at for 14 hours, anybody willing to stand there for 14 hours, and under that type of pressure, and then they immediately want to see the image, they pick it apart to pieces, and then they redo it. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's
over.
Anybody with the capacity.
It's a shock, I guess, if you're not prepared for that and thinking you wake up that morning and thinking this is going to be and then you show up and they're like, sit down, we'll tell you when we need you. Getting all this stuff ready. You're setting up, no, this is all wrong. You know,
it's a different world. I love portraits. I love my clients. I love my girls. I love, where I'm at. And I do really love working with certain brands. So I'm very picky about the brands I line and the way that I do it. So it's kind of got to be on my terms, because I'm not going to be I'm not going to be out there for 10 hours.
What you quickly learn, it's not about you, It's about them selling whatever it is, and it's about that.
Yeah.
It's about them knowing this has to be this way, and they're going to do it till they get it in that way. And it's not about your feelings. It's all about them, So it's a completely different way of working, right? When you show up normally, turn this way, they don't want any of that. It's all, it's nothing personal, but it has nothing to do with you, So yeah, that's interesting. And I'm glad you found sort of like a happy medium there to go and work with some of these companies and do it in a little bit more way that lets you express yourself creatively more so than being,
and gets them what they want, but on, with how it works well for me. So
yeah. No, I would have zero interest in ever doing. I've never been approached to do that, but I know right away I would have no interest in that type of a thing too, because why? I guess other than if the pay is good and you could sit there and cash that check and hey, we all see green, what I'm saying? Yeah. Sometimes there's a little more to it, but for the experience, I'm sure it was a good experience for you in learning.
Yeah, a safe place to learn.
Learning that. Yeah, so we covered a lot of things today here, Kirstie. Good show. Glad you made time to come on and
having me so much.
Talk to me, and everybody needs to head over to your Instagram and scroll through and find you and look. And so what I want you to do, and you have a couple of different places, and for the people who we've piqued their curiosity, where's the best place to go for the image people who just want to see some of these images?
So KirstieMarie.com, KIRSTIE. KirstieMarie.com is all my portrait work. So that is my portrait photography business and all of my portrait work. And then from there, you can click over. I have a website for photographers specifically, and that's called kmplearn.com. So kmplearn.com is a brand all for photographers I have a blog up there with 5 years worth of information that I've been posting. It's a ton of free education. So there's YouTube videos and there's blog upon blog. Every couple of months I do a huge question and answer where people submit questions and I'll go through and answer them all. So there's a lot of that. There's different topics. So there's a ton of information. Even if you just plug in the search what you're looking for, there's 5 years worth of blogging I've been doing on that website. And then there's also courses to purchase. So if there's something specific, there is every topic you can imagine on the business side of all this.
Yeah, there's a lot. I was looking through. There's a lot of work you put on.
Yes.
On there, and then you got a lot of photos on your Instagram too. You got people looking at your horse photos on Instagram, and we mentioned that before. We'll put all these links down in there, but you're just Kirstie Marie Photography on Instagram.
Correct.
They can go over and
Facebook.
Meet up with you there. Oh, you're on the Facebook too, and see.
And the Pinterest, and
I found you on the YouTube machine too, lady.
You found me on YouTube. Is that true?
I found you on YouTube, just looking at your videos, and so that's a lot of work to go and make videos too. But people can find you on YouTube there. And
Yes.
you see you're doing some mentoring too. And I guess that's local people in your area. You're not doing that online. It's person-to-person type.
Actually, I most commonly do Skype sessions.
Oh, really?
So and I was literally just Skyping someone in Australia. And I've done South Africa and all over Europe. So coordinating times is difficult.
Yeah,
but
that's tough. Yeah.
doable. So the most common is Skype sessions, just like one-on-one over Skype. But I do one-on-one in person, but that has to happen in Texas. And I have people travel to Texas for that or local to Texas.
It seems like you'd be someone you want to hang out with to learn that more, like in person, to go through and
that's why the courses are so nice, because I had a full film crew with me, so it feels like you're shooting alongside me. Like you're right over my shoulder, and I'm turning around to explain everything, and that way you can see.
Talking to the camera.
Yeah. It's like you're right there. And so you watch me pose, you watch me position a horse. I have my favorite video is the working with natural light, because I completely explain how I use light, where I'm going to set them up in relation to the background and whatnot. And so it's kind of like that in person, but you get to do it virtually.
The feel of it, you can reach a lot more people.
Yeah, and it's a much more affordable price point too.
Yeah. Well, she's expensive, but she's worth it. She's worth every penny. But I guess you probably do have people who ask to come along with you. I imagine you get, I really want to learn. Can I come and shadow you or come work with you? So how do you approach that when people...
I don't do shadowing. I will pay people to assist me. Sometimes I can't travel with my assistant. 90% of the time I'm traveling with my assistant, but occasionally if I'm going to your city and I need an assistant, I will pay you to assist me. I always welcome people who reach out and say, hey, I saw you coming to Ohio. I'm near there. If you need an assistant, let me know. And I'm like, perfect, because sometimes I do need that. And I will pay you to assist me. But I don't really do the shadowing thing. So it's either a one-on-one mentoring session we're doing together where we set it up with a model and you have my full attention to teach you everything, but you can't really shadow a client session of mine. But
it's difficult, especially in a situation like that, I imagine, where things could be a little skittish at first and your attention needs to be with the person and turning over your shoulder every couple of, and trying to explain to somebody why you're doing something or what's going on. So it doesn't always work out, and I run into that same thing where I don't want to teach anybody what I do, but people want to come in and I'm like, listen, you can't really stand over my shoulder with these women who are afraid to be there and me talking to you. And they're like, it's not the best type of a method, I don't think, personally. Yeah. So I get it. I get why you're doing it.
Not a public spectator sport. You know what I mean?
No,
They've commissioned a private shoot, and they are going to have my undivided attention.
The better way is to do it, like you said, I think, on a paid session where it's not a real client. You're paying someone to be there, and that way you can.
It's a model. They understand they're there.
Yeah, because the person, that's their session. It's not for you to teach. Yes. I agree with the same kind of a thing. So you're right on. So people can find you and get involved there, but definitely want to check out your work and go on there. And before we get out of here, I just have to say, go Frogs. Go Frogs.
Go TCU.
One thing that we have to do, you just have to say goodbye so we can get out of here today.
Yes. All right. Well, I can't thank you enough for having me. I really, really appreciate being here. So thank you so much.
See, I'm curious. I have this genuine curiosity.
Well, this is the perfect thing for you then.
It's fascinating to me too. And I would have never come across, got a chance to talk to you ever. So to me, this is great. And it just turns out there's a lot of people too. They just have this interest in learning and how these things come together.
I love listening to these podcasts. Especially while I'm editing or doing a task like that where it's just all day long. I can be playing information
in the background. So now you're part of it. You're out there. You're helping society. You've done your thing.
Oh, well, I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on today.